I'm a huge Buckeye fan. If you have a nice jersey, I can help you recruit.
Please get these ladies paid.
We're going to do what we want, and you're going to have no choice but to respect it. So basically, the NCAA was saying you can't benefit off of your athletic reputation, but we can.
It's 5 seconds on the clock. Are you going to fold under the pressure, or are you going to rise to the occasion and make a name for yourself?
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the 5 Seconds on the Clock podcast. Like I said, I will be back today for another episode. This episode, I'm going to talk about some of the best sports moments of 2019. Now, I won't talk about everything. It might be a specific play or a dunk or something like that I missed, because really I want to hit on specific headlines and moments more than I want to do specific plays. Now, if it's a play that happened that we'll remember for years to come and something that had a dramatic outcome on the league or a series and stuff like that, I will talk about that. But in general, I just want to talk about specific headlines and moments that happened in the year of 2019. I'm going to go, it's not in chronological order. I'm just going to go based off of certain leagues and stuff like that. So I'm going to start off with the NBA, and I have to start with Kawhi bringing a title to Toronto, what that meant for that city, and really what it meant for all of Canada. And, of course, they had the Kawhi and Dine. They offered him, if he stayed, he could have free food wherever he went, stuff like that. The city really, and like I said, all of Canada really just embraced Kawhi because of what he did for that city. And now, while I said I wasn't going to talk about specific plays, this is one that we're always going to remember. The Dame Lillard step back over Paul George in Game 5 of the Western Conference. What was that? Quarterfinals? Yep. The first round of the Western Conference playoffs last season. A step back pull up from 37 plus over one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Come on, Dame. That shot is going to live in Portland history forever, and really OKC history forever, because that shot split up Paul George and Russell Westbrook. That little experiment they were trying to do there in OKC, it didn't work. So they split that up. Both players went their separate ways, and OKC went in a different direction as a franchise. From Dame shot to Kawhi shot, the Game 7 Eastern Conference semis over Joel Embiid, a leaning jumper by Kawhi. And it didn't go straight in the net. It bounced around the rim 4 or 5 times. Just that picture of him standing, looking at the shot. Embiid, well, he wasn't standing. He was actually squatting. Kawhi was squatting, looking at the shot as it bounced on the rim. And Embiid was standing next to him, looking at the shot. And then that picture alone, that's going to live for years and years to come, for generations to come. Embiid was emotional after that game. That just showed how much he really, really cares about the game. He was passionate about the game. But that shot was the first buzzer-beating Game 7 shot in NBA playoff history. So that was history right there in itself. And, of course, we know Kawhi, like I just said, they went on to win the NBA Finals. And the next thing I want to talk about in the NBA is the shift in power. We've seen in the past guys take more control of their career, control their own destiny through free agency, but now we're also seeing that via trade. Players are letting their organizations know they're not happy and they would like to be traded. And the teams are not only trading them, they're trading them to organizations that they are asking to go to, the places they are requesting to go to. In the past, we've seen if you make a trade request, you're going to wherever we send you to, because this is the part of the business side. But nowadays, players are developing relationships with organizations, and organizations are like, look, this is the direction we're headed in. We understand that you want certain things for your career and for your life. And so if there's a certain destination you want to go to, we're willing to work with you. And that's different from years past. So a shift in power, that's something I'm seeing in the NBA. It's been happening for years, but it's like a new layer, it seems like, every year. And this is something that really stood out to me in 2019. I'm going to go from NBA to college basketball. Zion. That's it. That's all I have to say. Zion took over the basketball world, not just at the collegiate level. He took over the basketball landscape in general. Everybody was tuning in to watch Duke. People who hate Duke were tuning in to watch Zion, and they were even wishing for the success of Duke so they could see more of Zion. And we're still waiting for him to make his NBA debut because he is injured. But once that day comes, I'm sure he's going to be the talk of the basketball universe once again. So get healthy, young fella, and you definitely were exciting in 2019. Another thing in college basketball for me is Virginia winning the national title. The year before, Virginia was the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they lost to UMBC, the first 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed in tournament history. Next season, they come back, and they don't have a letdown. During the regular season, they do what they've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years. This decade, Tony Bennett, the coach for the Cavaliers, has really had Virginia focused. And we know what they're going to do every year. They're going to be consistent, especially on that defensive side of the ball. They came back, earned another number 1 seed. And this time, they didn't let all the distractions and the talk of what they did last year affect them. They came back. It showed the maturity of those players, the poise of the coaching staff, and the leadership of Tony Bennett to get that team, bring them back, and lead them all the way to a national championship. So the maturity. But let's transition from college basketball to college football. Joe Burrow's speech was one of the best things of 2019. It was emotional. He cried. His family cried. He made Coach Ed Orgeron cry. He said he thought he would never see that. He said he thought he would never cry himself. He even mentioned his humble upbringings in Southeast Ohio. He's a native of Athens, Ohio, and he talked about how there's not enough food there, sort of like a food desert, and people aren't getting as much food as they should be. And donations fled in. Within the first 24 hours, I think people had donated like $500,000 just because of his speech. He even thanked former teammates at Ohio State, former coaches at Ohio State. It showed how humble he is and why he's projected to be the number 1 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. It's not just because of his skill and his talent, but he's also a great person, a great young man. But don't get it twisted. The skill and the talent, that's the number 1 reason he's going to go number 1. Just had to throw that in there as well. And then Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has been one of the best stories in college football the last 4 years. He comes in his freshman season. He's a true freshman. In the first game, season opener, at Cowboy Stadium versus USC. Alabama, the offense comes out slow. Not really moving the ball. Who do they put in? Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts comes in there, and it's not what he did with his arm for real. It's what he did with his legs. As we know, when he was young at Alabama, that was his go-to. And he didn't lose it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he lost it. We saw what he did this past season with Oklahoma. But when he first started, he really heavily relied on his legs. But he got the job done. He won the starting job. He started for the rest of that season, led them to the national title game where they lost to Clemson. But listen, he scored the go-ahead touchdown, put Alabama up 3, gave them a chance to win the game. But if it wasn't a guy named Deshaun Watson on the other side, who always came up clutch in a big moment and threw the game-winning touchdown with 1 second left, Jalen Hurts could have been leading Alabama to the national title as a true freshman, starting true freshman. But Deshaun and the Clemson, they did come back. So what does Jalen do? The next season, comes back, leads Alabama back to the national championship where they faced Georgia. In the first half, it was slow. He really couldn't get anything going as far as the passing game. Alabama wasn't putting any points on the board. Georgia had a double-digit lead. Tua replaced Jalen in the first half and in the second half. And then, as we all know, Alabama ended up winning that game in overtime. Tua started the next season as the starting quarterback, was having a Heisman year. He got hurt in the SEC title game. Jalen Hurts comes in, leads Alabama to a victory in the SEC championship versus Georgia again, who they faced in the previous season when he was taken off the field for Tua. He comes in against Georgia, brings the team back, and gets a 28-21 win. That was storybook right there, just as it is. You don't have to write anything else about the story. That was crazy. And then, after his third season, after his junior season at Alabama, he graduated and he transferred and he decided to use his last year of eligibility at Oklahoma. And we all know what he did this past season. Over 3,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing, led Oklahoma in both categories, set a team record for rushing yards by quarterback and rushing touchdowns by quarterback this past season. He was second in the Heisman voting, won Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. Led them to the number 4 seed and in a semifinal matchup versus LSU. Yeah, it didn't go well. Ended his career But this guy, he told Lincoln Riley when he came to Oklahoma, he wanted to lead them to a national title. And when they lost to LSU, he said that was one of the more hurtful moments of his life because they couldn't deliver on that promise. And that was something he really, really wanted. So that just shows the character of this young man. Great story from Jalen Hurts. From college football to the MLB, it has to be the Nationals for me. That is the big storyline in the MLB. After the first 50 games of the season, I remember they were 19-31. They might have been last in the division or second to last in their division. But they came back. They fought back. Anthony Rendon, Juan Soto, Strasburg, and everybody else on that roster. They came together as a team, played as one, and now look at them. They won the World Series over the Astros at that, one of the best teams in the past 3 seasons. Now we know it's some controversy surrounding the Astros and what they've been doing to supposedly get ahead, but in the last 3 seasons, the Astros have been one of the best franchises in all of baseball. And the Nationals were able to beat them in a 7-game series and win in Houston in a Game 7. So that's big for the Nationals. Shout out to the Nationals. Congrats to them. The first title in franchise history. How can we not talk about Fury versus Wilder? That first fight was amazing. I can't wait for the second one. But after Wilder knocked Fury down, especially that second time, we thought it was over. No getting up. But what did Fury do? He got up. I believe it was an 8 count. He got up, and the ref told him he was good. He could go back and fight. And the match ended in a tie. A lot of people said that was controversial. Some people said Wilder should have definitely won, especially because he knocked him down twice. And then Fury, I know he said that he did better tactical in that fight. He's the better tactical fighter in that match. So he said he should have won. He said he's going to show Wilder in the second fight, so I can't wait for that. That's going to be another amazing matchup. But when Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua, that was a big upset in the boxing world. Joshua was undefeated, and for the longest time, we've been wanting to see Wilder versus Joshua. But after he lost, Wilder was like, listen, he's a joke. I've been telling y'all this. He's not really a great fighter. Basically saying he's not on my level. But we get Fury versus Wilder 2. That's in February. I'm ready for that matchup. That's going to be a great way to kick off 2020 in the boxing world. I'm ready for that. The women's soccer national team also won the World Cup in 2019. They dominated the tournament. Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan stole headlines. Megan Rapinoe had that famous pose after she scored a goal, and many people were mimicking it and using it as their celebration in other sports. And the women were also very, very outspoken as far as equal pay, saying that they should get the same amount of revenue as the men's soccer team does, but the men's soccer team does generate more revenue. That's not really on the women. They can't do anything about that, but they have been fighting for equal pay. That's another thing that stood out as far as what they did during the summer. It wasn't just what they were doing on the field, but what they were doing and what they were saying off the field as well. So shout out to those women. Keep representing our country and making us proud. Now let's go to golf. My man Tiger Woods won the Masters in 2019. His first major championship since 2018 and the 15th major of his storied and illustrious career. And he's getting older. Of course, Tiger's 43 now, but when he won the Masters, that was his 5th green jacket. And like I said, 15th overall, getting a little closer to 18 by Jack Nicklaus. But we'll see if Tiger's able to break that. But it was just good to see him in the winner's circle again in a big major tournament. We've seen Tiger in these positions before, but it's been so long since we've seen him able to perform and dominate like he did at the Masters. So that was just a great scene to see, especially him there with his kids. It was lovely, and I'm happy for Tiger, quite frankly. Even if he never wins another major again, I'm happy for him. We're going to go from the green to the ice. The St. Louis Blues were one of the worst teams during the regular season. Not to end the regular season, but during the regular season, they had the worst record in the NHL. And then things turned around. They got a new coach. They had a rookie goalkeeper. He came up big, especially in the playoffs. I remember watching them during the playoffs. Regular season hockey, I'm not really watching a lot of that. But when it gets to postseason, it's exciting, and it's 7-game series, I will tune in. And I watched them. I definitely paid close attention to Stanley Cup Finals, that amazing 7-game series. St. Louis was able to come out on top and beat the Bruins. They did it in Boston, which is a feat in itself because we know Boston and that crowd, that city, how they get behind their sports teams. And they were the favorite. They were at home. But St. Louis was able to end the drought, win the first Stanley Cup in franchise history. And now, last but not least, before I get to that, let's go to the tennis world. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic had one of the best matches in Wimbledon history. They played the longest men's singles final in tournament history. It was 4 hours and 57 minutes, almost a 5-hour match. It ended with a fifth set tiebreaker at 12-all. Djokovic was able to finally beat Federer. He got that advantage. He wore Federer down as the match went on, and he was able to win in 5 sets. He won 7-6, 1-6, 7-6, 4-6, and then the last one was 13-12 in favor of Djokovic. But last but not least, let's go to the NFL. One moment that really stood out for me came from the NFL draft when Ryan Shazier, who was paralyzed last year, linebacker for the Steelers, was paralyzed in a play versus the Bengals. And it was just great to see him to be able to walk because he was paralyzed, like I said, so he had to remember how to do all that stuff again. It was great to see him to be able to walk on that stage and announce one of the Steelers pick. I can't remember exactly which pick it was, but it was just great to have that moment. And then Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, they just broke NFL records in back-to-back weeks. First was 2 weeks ago, Monday Night Football. Brees, he broke Peyton Manning's all-time passing touchdown record. He now has 540 and counting. And then the following week versus the Tennessee Titans, Mike Thomas had 12 catches, over 100 yards, and he broke Marvin Harrison. Marvin Lewis, that's a coach. He broke Marvin Harrison's record of 143 catches in the season. He now has 144 and counting. It was just great to see those two guys who are really hard workers, who've had historic careers. If you look at Mike Thomas's first 4 seasons, he has the most catches for a player through his first 4 seasons. He's going at a historic rate. This is just the beginning for Can't Guard Mike, as he calls himself, and what a fitting name, because you literally can't guard him. This is the one team where you know who their primary option is, you know who their number 1 wide receiver is, and it seems like every week defenses still aren't able to stop him. So that's why you can't guard Mike. Also in the NFL, it's the year of the black quarterback. I talked about this in episode 8. You got Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, even though he has 30 interceptions. When you look at the quarterbacks who are successful right now, and some of the quarterbacks who are at the top of the game, I didn't mention Deshaun Watson. You look at these guys, they're playing in playoff games. If you take out Jameis and Dak, those guys I just mentioned, all of them are going to be in the playoffs. These young men are changing the way the position is viewed, the way the position is played. Now quarterbacks aren't just using their legs. Before, you were either a passing quarterback or you were a running quarterback or / mobile quarterback. But now these guys are both. They're great throwers. They have great arm talent. They're also very mobile, very agile, can get outside the pocket and make plays. But those are 3 big headlines for me. Shazier, Brees, and Thomas, and the year of the black quarterback. Let me talk about some of the best games in the NFL. Now, I know I didn't get into the specifics in too many other leagues, but I want to talk about some specific games. Week 1, first Monday Night Football game of the season. It's Houston Texans at the New Orleans Saints. Setting the scene for y'all. 4th quarter, Saints score. They go up 27-21. They kick the ball off. 2 plays later, 13 seconds later, they score. Texans go up 28-27. Looks like the game might be over. 39 seconds left for Drew Brees to get his team in field goal range. And then somehow the Saints find a way to march down the field, set up Will Lutz for, I think it was a 58-yard field goal attempt. Monday night game, first Monday night game of the season. Will Lutz knocked in the 58-yard field goal, and the Saints won 30-28. That was the first Monday night game of the season, but I remember it like it was yesterday because it was so good, especially those last. It was like the last 6 plays were all scoring plays. Touchdown, and field goal. After that, Saints were involved in this one again. Saints versus 49ers. The Niners won that game 48-46. This was when George Kittle had that big catch and run on 4th and 2. Caught the ball across the middle, shook off a defender, Another defender tries to tackle him, grabs his face mask. He's dragging that defender down the field. 2 other defenders come over, and it takes 3 guys to get him down. Plus, it was a 15-yard face mask added on to the end of the run. But that game is the reason the Niners are the number 1 seed and the Saints are the number 3 seed. That had huge playoff implications. It was at the end of the year. It seemed like the Niners were playing all the good teams in the NFL, and they were going head-to-head with all these teams. They won some and they lost some, but literally all their losses came down to the last play of the game. That's why they only had 3 on the season. Niners were involved in a lot of these games as well. 49ers versus Seahawks in Levi Stadium. First game they played this season. Seattle won in overtime on a field goal as time expired. In overtime, not a regulation. They won in overtime as time expired. So that means they played the whole overtime. If he would have missed that field goal, that game would have ended in a tie. This looked like one of those games where Seattle was going to run away. Seattle was up early. Jadeveon Clowney was making an impact, getting sacks, getting pressure. Even when he wasn't getting there, he was speeding the game up for Jimmy Garoppolo. And Seattle had a lead, but like they did all year, they kept fighting. The Niners came back, forced the game into overtime. It looked like there was a drive early into overtime. I think it was the first time that Seattle got the ball. It looked like they were going to score. Russ was leading them down the field, and then he threw a pick. Very, very uncharacteristic for Russ, especially in those leverage situations. Threw a pick. The Niners weren't able to score on it, though. They got the back. And then Seattle got the ball back, and Russ did what he does. He did what he always does in those clutch moments. Came back, led his team down the field, got them in field goal position, and they kicked the field goal as time expired to win that game. Then the other game, the Niners are also involved in that one. Niners versus Ravens. Low-scoring game. It was a rainy game. Lamar Jackson, he did what he did all year. He went over 100 yards rushing, and he had over 100 yards passing, and he had both a passing and a rushing touchdown in that game as well. And you can't forget this. This came at the beginning of the season, of the beginning of 2019, when Tom Brady won ring number 6. That put him amongst some of the greats all time in any sport. Of course, that's the most in NFL history, 6 rings for one player. But that puts him up there with guys like Jordan, who you think of as far as the greatest athlete of all time. That number 6, it just seems like there's a lucky 7, but that 6, that seems to have a lot of importance when it comes to titles in major sports. Like, it seems like if you can get to that number, you're considered as one of the GOATs. And Brady was able to do that last season. I know the game wasn't pretty. They won 13-3, but Brady he knows how to get his team into the postseason, and they know what to do once they get there. That's why I'm not too worried about them this postseason. Even though, as you'll see coming up later this week when I preview the playoffs, I do have a prediction that you might not expect for that New England versus Tennessee game. But that's for later in the week. And really that's all for this episode. Those are some of the best moments in sports of 2019. Like I said, I know I'll probably miss some. If y'all hear this, please share any games, any moments, any accomplishments by a certain player, anything like that I missed. Please let me know. But that's all for that episode. Got more coming for y'all later this week. Thanks for tuning in to the 5 Seconds on the Clock podcast. It's your boy Brandon Williams. Yeah, did.